Paul and I are very excited to talk about identity and how you're going to secure it on your infrastructure from insider threat. Before we get started, there is a survey that's part of today's event. If you can all please take out your phones, take a picture of that QR code, and have that survey open during the presentation. That way, it gives you a chance to provide your input along the way during the session as well. My name is Nim Nadarajah. I'm one of the partners here at CriticalMatrix and run security. I've been doing this for 27 years. Honestly, an hour isn't enough to talk to you about identity, but I'm very excited and honored to be speaking together today with Paul Greeley from Semperis. Paul's got 23 years of experience, is a tremendous expert in the Microsoft and Zero Trust space, understands Active Directory and identity like the back of his hand, and really is a pleasure, Paul. What is this? It's our second webinar together, right?
Yeah, it's our second one now. Always fun to talk with you, Nim. I love your knowledge. I love your industry thought process. It's so good to talk, man.
That's awesome. Thank you, Paul. So we're going to talk about identity. And before we get started, I want you guys to reflect on something today as we go through this webinar. I want you to take away from this webinar today some clarity and understanding around the importance of not only identity control, but understanding how that identity is evolving and changing within your organization, and whether or not you have clarity around do you have all the metrics and telemetry you need to be able to monitor, manage, and control that identity within your organization. It's very important when it comes to critical infrastructure, as well as our financial health and other systems, to be able to take that perspective. You can do everything you want in security, but at the end of the day, if you're not protecting identity, that is going to be your biggest vulnerability, because it takes just one person to click on one thing, and then it begins. So a refresher, right? The 3 C's of identity. It's consistency, context aware, and continuous monitoring of the identity across your entire threat plane. That means at all times, you are aware of the device, you are aware of the person, and you are furthermore aware of the location and context in which it is being used. So we're all doing all of these things, right? Like we're doing it 100%, we're doing it really well. So reflect on that a little bit. The second thing, and amazing diagram, thanks to our friends at Gartner. This is complicated. So even though you're doing everything right, and you have this myriad of tools that's in the center of this diagram, the threat is real. 56% of breaches resulted from a careless or negligent insider. And the topic we're covering today is the first piece of that honeycomb on the upper left-hand corner that says ITDR.
Correct,
right?
Yep.
Identity, threat, detect, and respond. And in our complex technology environment, the insider, it's what's causing about more than half of the risk to our organizations. Hence the title of the event, Hackers Don't Really Hack You, They Just Log In. So what's an insider? We're all insiders. That's why Paul and I are dressed like this. Because you know what? It's every single person in the company. And it's everyone who's trusted, everyone who has keys to the kingdom, everyone who has any knowledge of data or system. Right, Paul?
That's exactly it. Like, so the thing is, we have to have the trust for our employees, but there are insider threats, so people can take that knowledge and that I guess credential, and use credential abuse, for example, just for like one different way of looking at it. Like identity is very complicated. It's not a it's not a be all end all. And just like the slide says, like there's so many different aspects of identity. Like like identity is just a catch all phrase, right?
That's it. Exactly. Exactly. So let's cover the types of insider threat. And this one's always my favorite one. And guys, the bad guys are getting really good. They're using AI. They've got their version of ChatGPT. So if you notice, the Nigerian Prince emails now don't have typos, grammar errors, and spelling errors because they've got sources, just like we have sources to get better. And the links that are coming into your organization, because we all do a good job with managing phishing links, right?
Yep.
So it's an accidental click, a genuine, I thought that was real, right?
Yep.
Then you got the
And
malicious insider. This is the trusted person who intentionally does something, knowing that it's going to affect the company in a bad way, but that is really what they want to do. That's the result they want to achieve. Negligence. This one is common. You know what the policies are. You know what the rules are. Um, you didn't intend to cause harm, but you knowingly broke the policy. Like you literally added your mail to native apps on your iPhone or Android. You literally forwarded meeting invites to your Gmail because you want to manage your calendar with your wife or your partner or your spouse. And you decided, you know what? I'm just going to start forwarding everything to my Gmail, not knowing that your Gmail may have actually been compromised, which gave the attacker perspective into understanding what's happening in your company.
Yep.
And collusion. So you know what? I know we were 10 minutes late, guys, but let's just do this. I can't see all of you, but you can see me. It's around 11:15 in the morning. Been a long day already. Everyone, just kind of lean to the left a little bit and, lean to the right a little bit in your chair. You're allowed to do reactions. Let me know if you were able to lean and twist. It'd just be good to know, when you get it done. Here's the thing. You're very easily swayed.
Yeah, exactly. I like that. I like that a lot. And and just add a little bit of color around each. There's a couple. Like say an accident, for example. Like I was, there's a company that I worked with once upon a time. They had a service account that ran wild, changed, tens of thousands of users' passwords. Right. That's an accident in my mind because you tested it, you rolled it up production. You couldn't count on it, kind of thing. Malicious, for example, one thing I saw before in the past was a user actually changed their own user account, which was kind of like not the smartest thing to do in the world. They changed and sent an email to all of the C-suite executive voicing their, I guess, discontent with the current job actions, and then they basically renamed their account back, thought they were in the clear. Using some advanced threat hunting techniques with metadata and AD, we were able to actually find that person, and it was pretty easy because we actually knew the account that was actually changed. And negligence, well, I've seen it in the past. I was a part of an incident. It wasn't me who did this, but someone made a DNS change on Friday afternoon, deleted a bunch of DNS records. Thought they weren't useful. Turns out they were the front end load balancers for all the corporate applications in the environment. So I was at this place for 14 years. I had never seen a severity one, ticket in my life. I had 4 in 2 minutes. So
there you go.
that was a long week in rebuilding DNS. So
that's how it works. And I think we implement a lot of controls that these tools prevent us from receiving attacks from the outside. And
yep.
I think there has to be a little bit of mind shift. And the reason we're dressed as bad guys today is as technology and security leaders, just like law enforcement, you have to start thinking like the criminal. We have to start thinking like the bad guy. What's going to happen when somebody's on the inside? And the compensating controls have to evolve in order to consider how are we going to start blocking attacks from the inside, because more than half the attacks are insider threats.
Mm-hmm.
So what's an insider threat? What should we be looking for? What are some of the risk indicators that lend itself to this? So privilege escalation.
That's
This
number
one's
one.
easy.
Yeah,
Number one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And where does that happen? That escalation for privilege occurs on your identity plane. It means I'm buddies with the IT guy. We've had enough beers that I can walk into the help desk leader's office and say, look, man, I'm leaving next week. Can you do me a favor? Can you just bump up my privilege? Right? And
Yep.
their buddies like, look, and it lends itself to the second one, departing employee. Like, I feel so passionate about this drawing of this nuclear warhead that I created. I'm so proud of it. I want to take it with me to my new boss and show him this is my warhead. So I want to take it out of the company. And I think it's okay because I created it, but it's a material risk to the organization. And you know what, Paul? People don't realize taking information that you created that's intellectual capital of the company is actually theft.
Absolutely. Yeah. Any kind of intellectual property, managed intellect, like MIP, for example. Yeah, that's all theft. That's all.
That's right.
Yeah.
All theft. Anomalous data exfiltration. How do we know that? How are you tracking people are not stealing your data? Abnormal system access.
Yep.
How are you tracking what time people usually log in into? Is it normal for Nim and Paul to be logging in at 3 a.m. in the morning and
Yeah.
transfer about 4 gigabytes of data?
Yeah. I love these next two, like abnormal system access and user activity changes, because as human beings, we are all creatures of habit, and we don't stray outside of our habit too often, kind of thing. So, yeah, this is a huge indicator that something's probably going on nefariously in your environment.
Absolutely. Sequence of risky activities. You know, asking IT to bump up my privilege. All of a sudden, Nim's a global administrator.
Yep.
Nim starts moving data out of the organization a little bit every night, starting at 3 a.m. to 4 a.m., right?
Yep.
Happen to be doing it from, I don't know, a Costa Rican IP address. All of these things need to be adding up. But more importantly, like I made everybody sway to the left and right earlier, intimidation and harassment. This is real. So, anybody's on this call working for critical infrastructure companies, we don't hear about this happening in North America as much. But in other countries who are in economic peril, and one might argue, hey, we're pretty close to that sort of situation in North America as well, with interest rates and tax laws and all of the stuff happening. You know what? If somebody extorts another person, they're probably gonna give up the data because it costs them nothing and they're gonna get money in return for it, right?
Yep.
Intimidation and harassment is real, and it usually goes after mid-tier people in the company who have the ability to gain privileged access
Yep.
and can sort of anomalously exfiltrate that data.
Yep. Generally, like you said, like a mid-tier resource with some significant privilege that
Yeah.
they can take advantage of, basically, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, usually it takes about 90 days to contain an average breach. Let's just say it's an external attack. Insider threats are just as complicated and take about 85 days. So these are serious situations, right?
Like
And
on the
so,
yeah. Oh, sorry.
yeah,
Like on the high end, like I saw a stat there recently that it's basically $17 million basically for an insider threat attack. Like if they
look at that.
successfully, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, we all have 17 million sitting around, right? So we should be okay on that. We got
Yeah.
it covered. My friends from the insurance industry, if you're on the call, I know some of you did register. Welcome, and there's your number, $17 million. So you should be checking to see what controls, compensating controls, as leaders, organizations have to mitigate insider threat. I mean, it would be a good question to add on that questionnaire. And so the next slide, we trust our people. It won't happen to us. People love working here, and we're pretty safe, right? I mean, you've heard that one before, right, Paul?
I've heard that so many times, it's unreal.
So you got some cool stories, right, Paul? I mean, these are real stories that as an organization, Semperis has been made aware of too.
Yep, yeah. And there's been a number of situations like in this position and other positions that I've worked in over the years. This is a common theme for sure, right?
Absolutely. So let's talk Atlassian. So,
So yeah, so yeah, yeah, like that was an interesting one, right? Because essentially someone actually put their credentials out in public, consumption, we'll say, and then they just basically turned it around, right? So they turned it around. They got basically created a perfect chart on like Atlassian, basically. So they knew who worked there, what their buildings looked like, and all because one employee just made one little honest mistake and published a credential and didn't actually remediate it. Like same thing for like military is a big thing. People tend to be probably a little bit disgruntled. They have access to classified documents. We've seen it a few times now with WikiLeaks, for example. Like that was a CIA attack. U.S. Army has also had the same thing. Basically foreign entities, like threat actors tend to kind of like use people who are angry and probably like have an axe to grind. Like it's their
absolutely.
way in, basically, right? So
That's
um
real.
yep, it's real.
That's real. These are great stories that hit the news, but I have a fun story that's real and close to home. We
Yep.
had a client who obviously retroactively discovered this, and it's a true insider threat. An employee figured out through guidance of another family member to use TeamViewer to transfer data off of the work computer to their personal computer.
Oh
And
god.
because they had controls on the computer that prevented, USB and external email, and they were aware of all these detection and controls in place, they said, well, I'm going to connect over VPN from my laptop to the office. And then I'm going to allow a TeamViewer connection like support uses
Yep.
to my personal machine. Then use that connection to move data from the office computer to the personal computer. And guess what? No one was none the wiser
No.
until somebody detected, wow, why is there all this data moving over VPN that is inconsistent? And if it wasn't for that person detecting that there was a weird amount of traffic moving over the VPN pipes consistently over a period of a week,
Yep.
they would not have discovered that this whole data move was happening.
And like just to add, that's a great story, Nim, because that's amazing, and like I can see that happening in the real world for sure. Well, like you saw it happen, like in real time, basically. Another thing I've saw over the years was anyone remember when we had the Skype headsets, the USB headsets? Like when it was kind of getting big. I was working with a company. They discovered that the cleaning company that they had hired were actually swapping out their headsets in the overnights when they came in to clean, and
Yeah,
they actually had keyloggers, right?
nice.
So every time they plugged in their headset, they were being keylogged, right?
Wow,
So yeah, yeah.
that that's cool.
It was,
You got to
you
give
know
them
what?
credit.
I was like, you know what? I'm impressed, right? I'm disturbed, but I'm impressed. And then, yeah, but yeah, and like, put this all in context, like with all the news, like these days, election interference and everything else. Like this is like people who we trust, it can like sometimes come back to kind of like, get us, just like some of these like examples we talked about, right? So
Absolutely, absolutely. And so I guess the question is, um, improving your insider threat posture. Like what, it's great. All of this bad stuff is happening.
yeah,
How do we get better? Well, for your leisurely reading, you can Google Insider Threat Mitigation Guide dash the CISA, and there's a fantastic direction guide there for you to read just before bed,
yep.
and it will definitely help you fall asleep.
It will probably take you a couple of nights to get through, but it is
Yeah.
a super good information. Yeah, I highly recommend the CISA, Insider Threat Mitigation Guide to anyone,
Or
right?
or
Oh,
you attended this webinar, so you could revisit your Active Directory delegation, improve
there you go.
audit collection and processing, and your investigative sort of your PAM solutions, so
Yep,
that you set up your PIM and your PAM, privilege identity and privilege access, correctly,
yep,
so you don't find yourself in this situation in the first place, right,
exactly.
Paul?
Exactly. And like the AD delegation like strategy, essentially someone came in, probably set up your AD in the year 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003-ish range, right? So, like AD like doesn't reset when you've you promoted to, like, a new domain controller, and you know whatever was set up in 2003 for you is now basically probably obsolete, you know, in terms of today's threats. So you know, like take a good hard look at your, you know, at your delegation strategy. Like, understand where you're giving privilege, and a lot of the times people probably put something in there back in the day to make it easier for like a desktop admin to administer computers or something like that. So there's always this legacy delegation that's always hanging around your AD,
Yeah.
and it will come back to bite you most of the time, right?
Oh,
You know,
100%.
yeah, and Pim Pam, like that. You know, this is my new jam. Right? Like, I'm a poet and I didn't even know it. Right? So, all right. So,
Pim
you know,
Pam,
like,
that's my
yeah,
jam.
it is like it's so good. Like, you know, this is one of the single-handed way to kind of, you know, stop, you know, credential theft, or even, you know, like privilege abuse. So, you know, have a deliberate process in place, right? And
That's
you know,
right.
there's lots of toolings around that we can use, but it has to be deliberate, has to be tracked. And same thing, like knowledge is power in my mind. You know,
Yes.
improve your audit and collection. Like, say, like, get as much telemetry from as much places as you can, you know, because, you know, A, it will help you understand your environment better, and B, it will help you make decisions on going forward on what access people actually need, right?
Absolutely.
And you may even find like someone kind of abusing, you know, credentials along the way too, right? So
Absolutely. You know,
yep,
the banks take this kind of seriously from identity perspective. It's called KIF surfing. So KIF is, you know, if you're with RBC, it's SRF, it's your number. KIF with some of the other banks, CIBC, BMO, is called client identification file. So KIF surfing is frowned upon because you can go look at, let me go look
hmm
at Drake's bank account. Let me go look at, you know, so-and-so's
yep,
influential person's bank account. And so they've got, you know, controls in place to alert immediately when you start looking up clients that either are not in your book or not in front of you and haven't entered the PIN. So good behavior, you know, it's like me wondering the other day, it's so cool that I could go 1 kilometer or 3 kilometers over the speed limit by a speed camera, and within 5 days, I'm getting a ticket, a photograph of me in shock, and a photograph of my license plate, the exact location with
yeah,
longitude and latitude where my car was,
with
and
your brake lights on,
yeah, license plate, the whole 9 yards, right?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
they're already
the whole
coming with
shot,
tune I was playing on
yeah.
Spotify, but yet my car can go missing and they have no way to stop it from, you know, entering a container and being shipped to another country. But this is the thing, we're good at implementing controls in certain areas, and we're very poor at implementing those same controls in another context. And it's time to start looking at identity in that sort of holistic way. So how to watch for data theft. um, let's talk about this one, Paul, because this is
Yeah.
you know, bread and butter to us every day. Let's talk about three of these that are the most fun ones that you think.
All right, so like essentially, like encryption is always a good one, right? Because essentially, data, like, you know, people who are, you know, are sophisticated and trying to steal your data, you know, they're not going to let you know that they're stealing their data. So they're going to be encrypting that traffic so that actually you can't actually see that data leaving, right? So, and sometimes it's actually like, you know, like it can be sophisticated. I'm aware of one attack back in the day with data, you know, data theft. They were actually exfiltrating data through ping packets. So that was an interesting one, right? Stenography. Stenography is actually, you know, not as widely known, but basically they're hiding information inside of data. Like, so it could be a file, it could be a picture, it could be anything else. Like in Windows, there's such things called file streams. So you can add a stream to another file. So the file looks like it's 1 kilobyte, but really actually holds a lot more data than that, right? And there's,
Wow.
you know, very specific ways to kind of access that data. But you know, to the watchful eye, that's a 1 kilobyte file, right?
Yep.
So that's not a big deal, right? And then, but really, they're exfiltrating data with those files.
I'll go on record saying I'm personally aware of another incident using stenography in a municipality context,
Yeah.
which the person was able to exfiltrate information in the form of maps and JPEG, but there was a lot of data in there that shouldn't have been in those JPEG files.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, it should way more than like you think is there, right? Kind of
Yes,
thing, right? Yeah.
absolutely,
Right.
absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, like, and like data snooping, like we can go back to my example about the, you know, like the old Skype headsets kind of with keyloggers. So like that was a good example of snooping. You know, like another way, you know, like there's a number of different ways. Like Nim, like your example was great too. Like for example, if anyone has any privilege in your environment, they have access to file shares. They can just go peruse anything they want, right? So, and like, you know, if people are, you know, there's an access group that's supposed to have access to HR data or, you know, intellectual property, that's fine. But, you know, if someone has a bit of privilege in AD, they can insert themselves in a group real quick, get access to
Absolutely.
that information. If you're not actually logging the data, like that's actually being looked at and actually group membership changes, you will never know that someone's into those files, right?
Right.
And like copying a file is one thing. You know, we all have camera phones now. It's like if I take a picture of my screen, no one's gonna know, right? Like kind
Yep.
of thing, right? So yeah,
So
and then
uh,
yeah,
actually, you know what? We have a guest who's raised their hand. So I'll turn on the mic for that guest that's asking a question here. So
yeah.
if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask us the question, go right ahead. Unless you raise your hand by accident. Give him a second here. Maybe that was an accident. So we will lower your hand. All right, let's keep going. Awesome. Yeah, Paul, I think you're bang on there. And you know, there are creative ways that people have come up with you know, to move information out. And guys, we could do everything correctly, and
Mhm.
you're not going to trap 100%. If anybody tells you that their product or technology does 100% security, you know what? It's a question to challenge, right? There are cases where you can 100% if you have the ability to hit a kill switch and stop all access, but people will always come up with creative ways of exfiltrating data,
Yeah.
and you start controlling it from the identity plane, you start to get better and better at it.
And then that's a great thing. I tell people the exact same thing. I was like, attackers got to be right once. We got to be right all the time, right? And then that's the way I look at it, kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So by the way, audience, if you do have any questions, you can raise your hand and I will unmute you for the duration of the question. Uh, we started a few minutes late, so we might be going a little bit faster in the clip than we wanted to, but we do have time to make sure we answer any questions, concerns along the way. Okay. Privilege abuse. Well, this one's interesting because with great powers come great responsibility, and you can also be easily swayed. Uh, you know, privilege abuse is a real thing. Uh, what do we want to talk about here? Like maybe we need to talk a little bit about man in the middle. I think
Yep.
you know, credential sharing. I have a good story for that one too, Paul. But
I
go ahead.
Yeah, no, I like so yeah, I like I'll start with the good, better, best. We'll say like credential sharing. You know, if everybody has the same credential and they're using that same credential, so like a generic account, for example, you know, how do we actually know who's doing what kind of thing, right? So, you know, that's an easy way for for someone to either A, get that credential because many people know about that credential, and B, we're not going to know who did what or like how did that person get their credential because it's a generic credential, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, like you're taking away all that visibility just for, I guess, admin ease, we'll call it, right? And then that's the way I look at it. You know, privilege escalation. This is a huge one for me. You know, how can I take a user and turn them from an everyday regular user into something with a bit of privilege? Now, like in the AD world, we always talk domain admins, right? Like, how do I get domain admins? But like that's noisy and that's it's not it's getting more difficult all the time. But now, like, not in all places. Don't get me wrong, but you know, like we probably don't need to get a domain admin. We need to get that file server access, right? We need to get
Mhm.
that HR system access. You know, like I know of a school board here in Canada that basically, you know, shut down for the summer. Someone created a bunch of accounts and used their HR system to pay out a bunch of fictitious students, right? So that's privilege escalation right there. They compromised the user. They figured out what group they had to be in. They put themselves in that group. They gain access to the HR system, and you know, before they actually caught it, like because it's summertime, people are like at the school, not so much. Yeah, they really kind of, you know, they took a financial hit on that one, and it looked
Yeah.
like it was just a bunch of students getting paid, kind of thing, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. You know,
and,
credential sharing is neat because most of it is a prevalent issue, and unfortunately, a real issue in what I would say is critical infrastructure when it comes to IoT sensors for pumps, hydro systems, and anywhere where there's a third party having to monitor. The third party usually says, well, yeah, we're monitoring it, it's safe, it's on our network, but they've got the same credential to access that pump as every other pump sensor that they have on their pane of glass, because it makes it easy for control room operators.
Yep.
Same thing used to happen in healthcare with the CART, KARTS. It's a CART system that nurses and physicians use with a laptop. It contains your bed ID as patient ID, and then the drugs and sort of your health status. Because the cart is shared by every shift, it's usually a common logon for that cart, which is not really a good way to think about it. True story, manufacturing company in Brampton, Ontario, using they're a warehouse, and they had 11 warehouse machines, and they also had these Telzon guns that have a screen on them, and basically you have to log into the gun to use it. So they thought it would be very convenient to just do user 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 17 for guns and workstations, and every shift you were assigned a workstation and a gun. So you would log in as user 17 and you would do it. Well, guess what? They never changed the passwords, they never changed the usernames. Ex-employees knew that. So using the buddy system, hey, can you let me in? A whole ton of inventory went missing because they just were open the door, come on in, scan, look in the Telzon gun, wherever the new stuff was, and go to that shelf and pick it and leave. Right?
Yep. Yeah. And that's a great one, yeah. Because that
That's
happens a lot.
wild. It sounds really simple, right? But in this day and age, with the correct systems and controls in place, there is no need to do credential share. It is a choice to compromise security for convenience, but we consistently do it. And
Yep.
we're not in a point where we should be making that trade-off decision.
Yeah. And yeah, no, and that's a great point, Nim. Like, people don't realize that, like, sometimes, like, security and usability is like a sliding, like a ruler kind of thing. The more you go one way or the other, the one way other suffers, basically, right? So
Yeah.
you go more, easy access, well, you're going to be less secure. You go more secured, and you're going to get a lot more help desk calls, right? Trying to
That's
log in,
it.
kind of, right? So
Yeah.
and yeah, like, if I can just make one little point there, like the last two there, excessive unused privileges and access by terminated users. Like, that's the thing. Like, a lot of people, if you're not disabling, accounts that haven't been used in 60, 90, 120 days or something like that, or disabling computer accounts that haven't been on the network in a long time, that's something that you probably should start doing. And I was at another customer years ago, and they got a call from an ex-employee telling them he still had access, kind of thing, and he was like, to disable his account because the HR system, the HR team never flagged him as leaving, so the AD team never disabled his account, and they weren't doing any sort of account cleanup, we'll say, right? So, and this person had some serious access too, and it was, yeah.
That's right. This one's another one that nobody really considers as a major threat, but it really is. Sabotage, right?
Yep.
Unfortunately, organizations give out layoff notices all the time. People get a bonus that they feel unrewarded for consistently. It wasn't big enough. It just simply isn't enough. So there is this, certain vindictive state sometimes people enter, and there's the data destruction. I'm just going to delete stuff
Yep.
that I think is important to the company to intentionally create harm, right? Uh, admin access. Let me go view the CEO's message mailbox. Suspicious activity prior to termination. Like, this is huge. Like, everyone gets a vibe that their layoffs are coming around the corner. Well, what can I start doing to either collect information that I could use in my new job, or maliciously harm my company? And then this one was added because of my team viewer story, where they have set up their own remote access configuration in order to access the systems and tools. Right? Unfortunately, these are not traditional security, identify, detect, respond functions. We're typically not listening to that, and we have to start paying attention to these because it's very real, right? And one of the things that I will go on record saying, the Semperis AD product that we've used with our customers at CriticalMatrix has done a great job with it. This is not a sales meeting, it's an education meeting. But we do want to share, and we do want to talk positively about some of the impact we've had, and share some stories around how we've helped our clients, right, Paul?
Yeah. So like we have like Directory Service Protector, right? So it's essentially, we have two major products. Well, so in terms of for the on-prem AD, but like Directory Service Protector is a tool that watches your AD in real time. So how does it do that? Well, we're not watching logs, we're watching replication, because like the only real way to kind of find tamper-proof AD changes. So the way I tell people, we're actually looking at the attribute level of AD. So anytime anyone makes a change to any object, to any attribute, we're going to know who actually, so what object was touched, what attribute was touched, old value, new value, what DC the change was on, and who actually made the change. So that information is critical, right? Now that's awesome, but continuous vulnerability assessment. This tool basically has. Is anyone aware of Purple Knight? It's our community tool that we publish. So Purple Knight is a point in time vulnerability assessment for your Active Directory. And Directory Service Protector will actually do the vulnerability assessment in real time. So it's actually watching your AD. So if anything comes up, it's going to let you know right away, right? So and then go ahead. Sorry.
The cool feedback, and I want to just cover one point here before we move to the next set of slides, is the auto remediation malicious
Yeah.
rollback.
Yeah.
So I'm a proponent of this, coming from a financial background. Any change is an unauthorized change unless explicitly authorized.
Yep.
And so it's funny, we, again, coming back to having a culture of security in the organization, we implement controls and things that other areas, but we don't do the same diligence when it comes to identity.
Yeah.
So what this item, second from the bottom there on the bullets, does is, if there is a change, say there is a bad actor and they are trying to elevate your privileges, an insider threat, and they're changing their access standards, this thing says, Control Z, undo,
Yep.
in
Exactly.
real time. So
Yep.
the person could spend an entire afternoon trying to make it happen, and it gets undone. Trying to make it happen, it gets undone. Now, along the way, it's alerting, logging, and recording this, so that people watching the pane of glass can quickly turn around and say, "Hey, Nim, why you keep elevating your access? We're getting these reports. Stop
Yep.
being stupid." Right?
Yep. And exactly. Like that's the thing. And the big use case here is definitely group membership for sure. If someone, if we can say these groups are considered privileged. Any change happens to these, roll it back immediately, kind of thing. But it's
Right.
not just limited to groups. It could be anything. Like it could be changes to security in OU, security at the domain level. And real-time security alerts. We can actually alert on some of the every time, just like Nim said, if someone does something, so we can do an auto remediation. If it's something that you don't want to auto remediate, we can still let you know. Like, hey, this person just probably made a change to OU security, right? That probably gives them full control to all users. That'd be a good thing to know, right? And
That's it.
on top of that, compliance reporting. So a lot of people got PowerShell scripts out there that they're running to kind of understand the hygiene and configuration of AD. We have a bunch of pre-built reports that can be run through the DSP console. And I'm willing to say 99% of them will cover off most people's needs.
Absolutely. And one of my pet peeves is that we don't do a good enough job as security leaders asking why, right? Because the business, and the answer, if it comes back, the business wants me to do it, the answer is usually, okay, we'll make it happen. But I think having that ability to challenge that identity change when it's happening. Not every user has to be global admin. Not every user has to be admin to their workstation. There are intentional reasons why you want to limit that. And so this also opens up that opportunity to have a discussion with a business leader who's saying, hey, my person in marketing who works out of the Philippines has to be a local admin and administrator to SharePoint. Well,
Mhm.
hold on a second, right? Let's use the technology the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
There's three aspects to identity and protecting it within the organization during its life cycle. There's the pre-attack, there's during an attack, and post-attack, after an attack. It's important to talk a little bit about the importance of, I'm going to say, security monitoring here when it comes to your identity, Paul. So
Mhm.
maybe we can talk a little bit of that. And then jump into sort of the importance of auto remediation, right? I mean, you and I could talk about this all day, but I
Yeah.
think the importance is really understanding the continuous monitoring, auto remediation, and we'll talk a little bit about what should happen after the attack.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So continuous security monitoring. So a product, it's good to have a product that's watching your AD in real time, and like has you know notification rules or like some sort of rule put in place to say if you see this group membership change, like what can we do? Well, like our product does one of three things. We can either just pop an alert in DSP, or we can actually send an email or auto remediate. And like auto remediate is what I consider the real meat of this product, right? It's like you say, if anyone changes domain admins, roll back that change right away and let me know, right? And that's just one thing. Like I said, there's so many different things that we can look for, and if you have some idea about what you wanted to monitor for, we can actually create notification rules, custom rules that you would like to see. So, and then the whole security, like IOE, IOC discovery. We have in terms of like on-prem AD, I think it's 117 indicators of exposure, so IOEs right now that we're looking for continuously. DSP is, and there's another 30 something that's actually we're doing for Entra ID. So we're watching both your identity stores. Well, we have the ability to watch both of your identity stores, and and then that will kind of that dovetails into, again, if you see something, you can set up auto remediation. So you see maybe someone's actively taking advantage of something, we can set up a security rule to say, if you see this, just automatically revert that change.
Yeah, yeah, that's key, right?
Yeah.
Being able to keep track of, if you see something, the system will automatically say something.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. Right.
And and the important part is also tying back into existing managed services framework, existing incident response frameworks, and also making sure that your partners, whoever they are, if it happens to be CriticalMatrix and Semperis, obviously we're going to be part of that flavor as well. So again, all products will do the best to prevent the issue from happening. The way we do it in Semperis is very unique and a lot more comprehensive than some of the other items that are out there. But should an attack happen, because people are creative, bad actors are creative, it's all about your mean time to recover, right? Your recovery time objectives, and how are you meeting those recovery time objectives? As a CISO myself, one of the things is, Chief Information Scapegoat Officer, right? That's what it stands for. We're going to get blamed. We're going to get yelled at. We're going to get peppered by questions when stuff goes wrong. The question is, who do you have in your arsenal that's going to make that RTO objective that you have and exceed it by coming in earlier, so the business is elated with not the fact that something happened, but how you responded to it. Because they only remember the last thing you did. And if the last thing you did is fail them with the RTO, and you failed them with how you got how you reacted and the breach happened, well, that's the legacy from that incident. But if you exceeded their expectations and came together effectively because you had the right partnerships framework in place, then you are celebrated. I do want to leave some time for questions. We have about 10 minutes left. I will go on record saying Paul and I have the same commitment from our last webinar. A lot of the attendees were very happy to take us up on the offer for a free assessment and report. We have some amazing tool sets that go on and capture and tell you a story. This is purely evangelistic on both our parts. We're not here to sell you anything. we generally want and are passionate of improving the security posture of our entire country. And this is what we can do, what small thing we can do in Paul's capacity and my capacity. Paul, you want to add anything here?
No, I'm just like you, Nim. Like I know both, and like you and I are like passionate about identity and security, and just security in general. And just kind of like just spread the word basically, and help out in any way, shape, or form, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Any questions from anyone in the room? You can raise your hand using the raise hand feature. It's a little emote, happy face emoji with the hands on it on Teams, and I can unmute you for the question. And while we're waiting here, if there are no questions, just double check here. Okay, so Paul and I are very thankful for you guys to take your time out of your day to join us today. I hope we left you with some clarity about the importance of identity in the company, and more importantly, why it's important to take a step back and have some controls specifically in place to manage, monitor, and report on your identity.
Yep.
Right, Paul?
Exactly. Like, everybody focuses on attackers, like outside, external attackers, but internal threats are just as big as external, for sure.
That's right. That's right. And those threats are very real. And you know what? If we change our perspective slightly and did two things well, I think we'd have a sort of, I would go on record saying a 70% reduction, right? It's about changing our perspective from understanding, one, what's important and critical within your organization from a data, identity, and asset perspective, with humans being an asset, and making a mind shift to focus security tools around purposefully securing them.
Yep.
And the second mind shift change is, instead of thinking from the outside in, because we have a mindset of thinking that we have to build a wall, not making another wall reference, just saying we have to build this wall, right?
Yep.
Because the generation that is in control today in a leadership capacity comes from the era of boxed firewalls. We came out of understanding how to secure the perimeter, but the perimeter now is a cloud and it's infinite. And when you start thinking from the perspective of what if the bad guy is already inside, now we're thinking about functional controls and technical controls that prevent egress of information and how to stop it at the source, where the human is the weakest link.
Yes.
And that's a paradigm shift in thinking, because the box sellers are also selling cloud, and they're constantly talking about external to internal security.
Yep.
And it's not about external to internal anymore. It's about internal to external, because that's where the problems happen.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you everyone for joining us. It's been a real pleasure. Apologize for the minor technical delay at the beginning. Please complete the survey. We do take your data very seriously. If we do collect your information, if you consent to it, we won't keep it for more than 30 days. It's a purposeful collection, used with intent. We'd like to send you the recordings, and also get some information from you on what you'd like us to see, what you'd like Paul and I do in our next webinar, because webinar 3 is going to be even more epicness than webinar 1 and 2. So yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you everyone for joining, and we will talk to you next time.
Thanks everyone.